I've been told that at my age a man should spend mornings doing crosswords and comparing pills with neighbors, but I've always been a bit of a contrarian. So instead of scanning obituaries or fighting with my cardiologist about salt, I was standing at the window of my Palm Springs estate, watching a stranger's car approach the gate. A dusty silver sedan that looked as if it had survived a mild war. I remember thinking, whoever drives that thing is either fearless or foolish. At that moment I didn't know her name was Evelyn Hart. And I didn't know she was about to turn my life inside out like a shirt forgotten in a hurricane. For the sake of clarity, I'm Charles Whitmore, 81 years old, self-made millionaire, retired real estate developer, proud owner of 3 ex-wives, 2 artificial knees, and 1 polarizing personality. I narrate this story myself because nobody else would dare to tell it honestly. Now, about the car. My daughter Rebecca, who'd appointed herself guardian of everything from my cholesterol to my checking account, was standing behind me, arms folded so tightly it seemed her bones might fuse. "That must be her," she said. "The candidate." She said candidate the way most people would say rodent. "And what exactly bothers you?" I asked her. "The fact that she's older than 30, or the fact that I didn't choose someone you approved?" "Dad, you don't need a new housekeeper. You barely leave the bedroom wing. What exactly are you messing up that needs cleaning? A man deserves fresh towels. And maybe a little privacy." Rebecca groaned. She had inherited my sharp tongue and her mother's inability to hide emotion. "Just be careful. We don't know her. Background checks only tell you so much." "Sweetheart," I said. "If she were a criminal mastermind plotting to steal my millions, I assure you she'd drive something nicer than that." The sedan finally stopped. The engine coughed, then died. A moment later, a woman stepped out. Even from a distance she looked composed. Not stiff or formal, composed, as if she had spent her entire life balancing trays of secrets and never dropped a single one. Gray hair pinned in a smooth twist. A navy dress that had seen better years but still managed to outclass half the people who'd walked into my home. A posture that dared the world to underestimate her. "That's her?" Rebecca whispered. I nodded. "But what I really thought was, I know that walk. Haven't seen it in half a century, but I know it." Of course, I told myself that was nonsense. A trick of age. Memory playing dress-up. People don't just stroll back into your life disguised as potential housekeeping staff. Especially not people who were supposed to be dead. Yet something deep and ancient in me stirred. When the bell rang, the sound echoed through the foyer like a verdict. Rebecca went to answer it first. Not to greet, but to assess, interrogate, possibly frisk. I lingered behind, pretending to inspect an old painting, though in truth my heart was thumping in a manner my cardiologist would strongly disapprove of. I heard Rebecca's cautious voice. "You must be Miss Hart." "I must be." Warm tone, low, a little amused. "And you're here to interview for the housekeeping position?" "I believe your father invited me, yes." There was something in her voice, something strangely familiar. I felt it land in my chest like a pebble dropped into dark water. Rebecca ushered her inside. "This is my father, Charles Whitmore." The woman stepped forward and her eyes met mine. Calm. Knowing. Dark as a secret that refused to stay buried. "Good morning, Mr. Whitmore," she said. And not for 1 second did she look surprised to see me. I tried to keep my face neutral, but inside my bones were rearranging themselves in alarm. I had never seen this woman in my life. And yet every cell in my body insisted, "You've seen her somewhere. Not recently, but somewhere that mattered." "Ms. Hart," I said. "Thank you for coming." She inclined her head. "You said on the phone you needed help maintaining the house, managing the staff, overseeing the daily routines." "I did," I replied. "Though I didn't expect someone quite so old," she offered. I coughed. Rebecca glared at me. I was going to say refined. "That works too," Miss Hart said, lips curving in what could have been a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. We walked toward the sitting room, but Miss Hart paused at the base of the grand staircase. She tilted her head slightly, examining the carved wooden banister. "You had this restored," she said softly. My stomach tightened. "Yes. 10 years ago. You kept the original motif." "I did." She nodded once, then continued walking as if she hadn't just trespassed into a memory I'd never shared with anyone in that room. Rebecca frowned at me, mouthing, "How does she know that?" I didn't answer. Once we sat down, the interview began. Or rather, Rebecca interrogated, and Ms. Hart sparred with the patience of a saint and the precision of a seasoned diplomat. "And how long did you work in your previous position?" Rebecca asked. "Long enough." "What does that mean?" "It means I know what I'm doing." "And you left because?" "People move on." "That's not an answer." "That's the answer I'm giving." Rebecca blinked. Most people shrank under her intensity. Ms. Hart looked bored. I admit I was enjoying myself. Then Rebecca shifted tactic. "Do you have any medical conditions we should know about?" "My father requires someone capable of handling emergencies." "I'm perfectly capable," Ms. Hart replied. "In fact, I'm very good in emergencies." Her eyes slid toward me in a way that made me sit up straighter. A small flicker. A small spark. A memory on the verge of surfacing. But I pushed it away. After 30 minutes, Rebecca stood abruptly. "That will be all. We'll be in touch." "Actually," I cut in, "I'd like Ms. Hart to start today." Rebecca spun toward me. "Dad! I'm 81, not 8. I can hire who I like." She shot me a look filled with all the frustration of a daughter who had spent her adult life treating her father as a part-time tornado. "At least let us finish reviewing applicants." We have finished. But the truth, the slippery thing sitting beneath the surface, was that I didn't want Miss Hart to leave this house until I understood who she truly was. Or why her presence felt like the beginning of something dangerous. Miss Hart rose, hands folded calmly. "I can begin immediately." Rebecca opened her mouth to protest again, but I lifted a hand, silencing her. "Show Miss Hart the guest wing," I said. "Then please give me a moment alone." Rebecca hesitated, shooting me a stare that promised a later lecture of biblical proportions. Then she escorted Ms. Hart up the staircase. As soon as they were out of earshot, I exhaled. My palms were damp. My pulse was unreasonably fast. I felt 17 again. Foolish, unsettled, standing on the precipice of something I didn't yet comprehend. A narrative voice, warm and detached, could easily say, "The old man sensed trouble, the sort that crawls into your life disguised as help." And maybe that was true. But in that moment, what I felt wasn't fear. It was recognition without explanation. When they returned, Rebecca departed in a storm of complaints about reckless decisions and security concerns. Her car peeled out of the driveway more angrily than was necessary. Ms. Hart, meanwhile, approached me with a small notebook tucked under one arm. "I've made a list of items that need attention," she said. "It seems your staff has been underperforming. They do what they can. They do what they think they can get away with." She said it so matter-of-factly that I laughed. Genuinely. The first real laugh I'd had in days. She glanced around the room, then met my eyes directly. "May I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you hire me?" I paused. Honesty felt oddly risky, but lying felt pointless. "You remind me of someone." She watched me, expression unreadable. "Someone important?" "Someone I haven't thought about in decades." Her gaze softened, but only briefly, like a curtain lifting just enough to reveal a stage before dropping again. "I see," she murmured. She didn't ask who. Didn't ask why. She simply turned toward the grand windows overlooking the courtyard. "Your daughter doesn't trust me," she said. "My daughter trusts no one who wasn't born in a hospital room she supervised." A sensible policy. "Are you suggesting you're untrustworthy?" "I'm suggesting I'm unknown." She walked to the bookshelf, touching the spines lightly, almost reverently, as if identifying old friends. "You have quite a collection," she said. "Some rare editions." "How would you know that?" Another small, enigmatic smile. "People notice things." "I meant specifically you." She gestured to a volume on the top shelf, a first-edition memoir of an obscure Chicago architect from the 60s. "This book was out of print before you were born," I said. "Most collectors don't even know it exists." "Your father gave it to you," she replied softly. "When you were 14. After the accident." My heart froze. "How do you know that?" I demanded. "Who told you?" "No one," she said. "That's impossible." Only one person had known that detail. One person who should have been nothing more than a memory. Before I could speak again, she closed her notebook. "Mr. Whitmore," she said gently, "would you like your lunch in the garden or the conservatory?" I stared at her, half convinced the room had tilted. You expect me to ignore what you just said? I expect you to choose where you want to eat. Are you going to explain yourself? Eventually. When is eventually? When you're ready. Her calmness unnerved me more than any confession could have. I pressed my palm to the armrest, grounding myself. Ms. Hart, have we met before? She didn't answer. She only straightened the vase on the mantel, a tiny adjustment perfectly precise, then stepped back. Garden or conservatory? She repeated. My voice caught in my throat. Garden. Very well. She left the room, and I was alone again, staring at the book she had touched. The book no one else in the family even knew the story of. A memory flickered behind my eyelids, blurred faces, a long-ago summer, a promise whispered on a rooftop before the world shifted beneath us. I pushed it away. I told myself she must have researched me exhaustively, that she was simply observant, clever, thorough. But the truth settled in my stomach like a stone. She knew something she shouldn't. Something intimate. Something buried. And yet, I didn't want to fire her. I wanted answers. When I joined her in the garden, she was already arranging the table. Simple, elegant, more fitting for a quiet Parisian café than my sprawling estate. The sunlight caught the silver in her hair, turning it into threads of steel and moonlight. You move around this property as if you've been here before, I said. I haven't, she replied. You speak to me as if you know me. Do you find that unsettling? I find it strange. Strange can be useful. I studied her hands, steady, graceful. Not the hands of someone doing her first day on a job. Tell me something truthful, I said. I always do. I mean personal. She lifted a single eyebrow. Why? Because I'd like to understand who I've just let into my home. She considered that for a long moment. Then she sat down across from me. Truth, she said softly, isn't always the safest thing to share. I'm old, I said. Safe is overrated. She smiled. Not the polite kind, but a real one, faint and unguarded. Very well, she said. One truth, then. She leaned forward. I came here for reasons you're not ready to hear. And I accepted this position because there are things you deserve to remember, and things you need to know. A chill ran through me. And what, I asked quietly, do I need to know? That you're not imagining the familiarity, she whispered. And you're not wrong to feel that we've met. My breath caught. When? I asked. She shook her head. Not yet. Not yet what? Not yet time. Then she stood, perfectly calm, and began arranging the cutlery as if she hadn't just dropped a bomb into my afternoon. That was when it struck me with absolute certainty. Evelyn Hart wasn't just a housekeeper. She was a key to a part of my past I had thought dead and buried. And whatever she was here to reveal, I wasn't sure I wanted to hear it. But I knew I wouldn't stop her. Because curiosity is the one addiction age never cures. By the second morning of Evelyn Hart's employment, my house felt less like my house and more like a stage where someone had quietly rewritten the script. I woke to the scent of coffee, real coffee, the kind they used to brew in Chicago before everyone decided caffeine had to taste like guilt. Someone had opened the curtains, adjusted the thermostat, and folded my robe so precisely it looked like origami. My first thought was, I hired a magician. My second was, or a spy. Both were equally appealing, though for very different reasons. A faint melody drifted down the hallway. Piano. Something old-fashioned, a tune I recognized but couldn't quite name. I followed the sound to the music room, where Evelyn was dusting the shelves with the delicate focus of a surgeon preparing an incision. The morning sun lit her profile, revealing a face that had clearly lived a life, not untouched by sadness but unbroken by it. You play? I asked, nodding toward the grand piano. She turned her head slightly, as if she'd heard me arrive before I made a sound. Not in years. I moved closer. And the music? Is that from the radio? No. Then where's it coming from? She gestured toward the record player. It spun an old vinyl, one I hadn't touched since, well, I couldn't remember when. The cover leaned against the table, a limited edition pressing of jazz standards from the 70s. A gift from someone long gone. I blinked at the sight. I didn't even know that records still worked. It didn't, she said. I repaired it. You repaired a record player on your second day here? It was dusty. as if dust naturally required mechanical expertise. And you just happen to know how to fix antique electronics? Some things you learn along the way. I watched her dust another shelf. You know, Ms. Hart, I'm beginning to think you're overqualified for this job. She smiled faintly. That depends on what you think the job is. Before I could respond, footsteps thundered through the hall like an approaching cavalry. Rebecca arrived, carrying her handbag like a weapon. I told you to call before coming over, I said. I did. You didn't pick up. She glanced around suspiciously, like a detective arriving at a crime scene. Dad, have you noticed anything strange about her? She's efficient. That seems to qualify as strange in this house. I'm serious. So am I. Rebecca lowered her voice. She rearranged the pantry. Alphabetically. Tragic. And she replaced your vitamins with a brand doctors actually recommend. Scandalous. And she asked me if I'd resolved the argument with my brother about the lake house. That caught me off guard. You told her about that? No. I've barely spoken to her. How would she even know I have a brother? Evelyn stepped into view, carrying a stack of folded towels. She wore an expression that revealed precisely nothing. Good morning, Ms. Whitmore, she said. Your father and I were discussing the record player. Rebecca stared at her like she was trying to see fingerprints of guilt on her face. Have you been researching us? No. Then how do you know personal things about this family? People talk, Evelyn replied calmly. You spoke about your brother on the phone yesterday. In the foyer. With the door open. Rebecca's eyes widened in embarrassment. She hadn't considered that possibility. She, self-proclaimed queen of security, undone by her own volume. Oh, she muttered. Anything else you'd like to know? Evelyn asked, tone still perfectly polite. Rebecca shook her head, cheeks flushed. No, that's all. As she stormed off toward the kitchen, I caught a glimmer of amusement in Evelyn's eyes, though it vanished almost instantly. I approached her quietly. You enjoy sparring with my daughter. I don't spar, she said. I clarify. Well, you're excellent at it. I've had practice. She resumed her work, but something in her posture hinted she had more to say. I waited. Age teaches patience whether you like it or not. Finally, she added, almost reluctantly, your daughter worries about you. She worries about control. There's a difference. Evelyn didn't argue. That was unusual. Most people tried. May I ask, I continued, why you noticed the record player? I hadn't played it in years. Her hands paused over the stack of towels. It's a beautiful piece, she said. It reminded me of something. What something? She didn't answer. Instead, she changed the subject with surgical precision. Would you prefer your breakfast on the patio or in the dining room? You're doing it again, I said. Redirecting. She tilted her head. Do you want honesty or comfort, Mr. Whitmore? Honesty always. Comfort is overrated. But before I could reply, the doorbell rang. Evelyn went to answer it. I followed. On the porch stood Daniel, my son, 45, perpetually stressed, and armed with the same suspicious glare his sister wielded like a sword. Dad, he said tightly, we need to talk. Privately. I've done nothing illegal today, I said. That I recall. Daniel stepped inside, glancing at Evelyn. Is she? My housekeeper, I said. He studied her intently, as though trying to decode her existence. How long have you known her? Since yesterday. And you're comfortable letting her live here? Should I not be? Daniel hesitated. Then, lowering his voice, said to me, Dad, she asked me about Mom. Evelyn paused in the act of closing the door. I asked if your mother preferred fresh flowers in the dining room. That's a reasonable question. Daniel's jaw tightened. My mother died 20 years ago. I know, she replied. How do you know that? You told your father earlier this morning. In the hallway. I looked at him. You should learn to whisper. Daniel rubbed his forehead. This is insane. He turned back to Evelyn. Answer me honestly. Are you investigating us for something? Are you writing a book? Is someone paying you? Evelyn met his stare without blinking. No. So what are you doing here? Working. Rebecca reappeared at the sound of voices. See? I told you something's off about her. The two of them stood united in suspicion, which was rare enough to count as a cosmic event. I raised both hands. Enough. She stays. End of discussion. Daniel looked like he wanted to protest, but he knew that tone. It was the tone I'd used during business deals, divorce proceedings, and once when a senator tried to lecture me about zoning laws. Fine, he muttered. But we'll be keeping an eye on her. Evelyn nodded politely. That seems wise. When my children left, slamming the door in synchronized disapproval, I finally exhaled. You handled them well, I said. I've met worse. I doubt that. Then you underestimate people. I leaned against the wall, studying her. You know, I said softly, you've managed to unsettle an entire household in less than 48 hours. An accomplishment? A puzzle. She didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't deflect. Instead, for the first time, she hesitated, a small crack in her composure. Are you afraid of me, Mr. Whitmore? She asked. No. Are you sure? I considered the question. Fear isn't always a physical sensation. Sometimes it's a whisper, a shadow, a memory threatening to claw its way to the surface. I'm curious, I admitted. And curiosity can feel a lot like fear. Her eyes softened. Curiosity built your fortune. And ruined it 3 times. Lessons learned. We stood in silence. Then she said, almost gently, there are things about your past you've avoided remembering. I'm old. Avoiding things is one of the remaining pleasures. Not this one. Her words hit me in a way I didn't expect, like she was nudging at a door I'd sealed shut decades ago. Evelyn, I said carefully, who are you really? She opened her mouth to answer, and then stopped. Her gaze slid past me, toward the window that overlooked the garden. A car had pulled up. Not Rebecca's. Not Daniel's. A black SUV. Tinted windows. Government tint if you know what to look for, and I do. 3 men stepped out. Broad shoulders. Dark suits. Earpieces. Are you expecting company? She asked. No. She didn't tense. She didn't panic. She only observed, with the calm precision of someone who'd seen similar scenes before. The doorbell rang. Evelyn stepped forward as if to answer, but I held up a hand. No, I said. I've got this. I went to the door, opened it an inch, and found myself staring into the expressionless face of an agent whose haircut could have been issued by the Department of Standardized Grooming. Mr. Whitmore, he asked. That depends on whether you're about to sell something. We'd like to speak with you. About what? A matter involving a former associate. I'm retired, I said. All my associates are either golfing or dead. The man didn't blink. This concerns someone from your earlier years. A woman. We believe she may have contacted you. Behind me, I felt Evelyn go still. My heart did something unpleasant. I don't know who you mean, I said. The agent reached into his jacket. I almost closed the door, but he only pulled out a photograph. A grainy black and white. A woman standing on a rooftop. Hair caught by the wind. Face turned slightly away, but not enough. Not enough to hide who she was. My lungs forgot their purpose. Do you recognize her? The agent asked. I hesitated. Who is she supposed to be? A person of interest in a long-term investigation. Is she dangerous? Potentially. I studied the photo again. Younger than Evelyn. But the resemblance uncanny. Or maybe not uncanny at all. What makes you think she contacted me? I asked. We have reason to believe she may attempt to reconnect with individuals from her past. And you think I'm one of those individuals? Yes. Well, I said, handing back the photo, I'm afraid you're mistaken. He stared at me for a long moment, trying to decide whether I was lying. Eventually, he nodded. If she contacts you, he said, call the number on this card. He handed it to me, then returned to the SUV with his colleagues. The vehicle rolled out of the driveway like a silent accusation. When I closed the door, Evelyn was standing exactly where I'd left her. You should have shown them the photograph, she said. You saw it. Yes. And? Her voice was steady. She looks familiar. Does she look like you? She didn't answer. I placed the card on the table. Why would federal agents be looking for someone who resembles you? People resemble each other all the time. That's not what I asked. For the first time since she walked through my doors, Evelyn's composure faltered. Only for a second, but enough. I stepped closer. So close I could see the faint tremor in her breath. Evelyn, I whispered, what exactly have you brought into my home? She looked at me with eyes that didn't belong to a stranger, eyes that belonged to a past I'd locked away. You invited me in, she said. That's not an answer. It's the truth. The room felt smaller, tighter, pressed in by memories I couldn't access. Finally, she added something so quiet I almost missed it. I'm not the danger, Charles. Then who is? She looked toward the window where the SUV had disappeared. Whoever still thinks I'm her. And who is she? Evelyn lifted her eyes to mine. A ghost, she said. One I tried very hard to stay dead. Before I could ask another question, she turned and walked toward the hallway, leaving me standing amidst a house that no longer felt safe, but felt undeniably alive. Whatever story I had stepped into, it was far bigger than a new housekeeper. And if Evelyn Hart was telling the truth, or even a part of it, then my past wasn't finished with me. Not even close. I've always thought that the past is like a drunk neighbor, noisy, irritating, and best ignored unless it starts banging on your door. Mine didn't just bang. It marched right into my foyer in orthopedic shoes and started rearranging the furniture. 3 days after Evelyn casually detonated my equilibrium with that line about my mother's lilies, something only 2 people in the world ever knew, I found myself haunting my own mansion. I drifted through rooms like a bored ghost, listening to the house breathe. It had been built to impress senators and intimidate bankers, but lately it felt like a museum with poor climate control. Maybe that's what loneliness does. It strips the glamour off marble and gold until all that's left is cold stone. I caught myself pausing by the kitchen more often than necessary. Not to spy on Evelyn, of course. I'm a grown man. A mature, accomplished man. An accomplished man who just so happened to develop an urgent need for water every 20 minutes. She usually hummed while she worked. Not banal tunes, she hummed with intention, as if auditioning for the role of enigmatic woman who knows more than she lets on. Sometimes it was a jazz melody I half recognized, and once it was the theme song of a spy show I'd watched as a boy. That last one made the hair on my neck stand up. On the 4th morning, I walked in right as she was polishing a silver tray. She didn't look up, didn't greet me, didn't even adjust her posture like people normally do when the man who signs their checks walks in. She just said, "You're limping more today. Weather must be turning." My jaw nearly fell off. I hadn't limped since the accident 30 years ago. Modern surgery had patched me up well enough that even my doctors sometimes forgot. "How did you? You should rest that knee," she cut in, her tone crisp but not unkind. "You've been pacing. Pacing never solves anything unless the thing you're solving is your impatience." She wiped the tray, inspected it, and only then allowed her eyes to meet mine. They were unsettling eyes. Not because they were cold, they weren't. They were observant. Too observant. As if she carried a file on me in her head and updated it every time I blinked. I tried to sound casual. It came out as something between a cough and a plea. "Evelyn, I've been meaning to ask, have we met before?" She smiled faintly. That smile should be patented as a psychological weapon. "Most people don't meet everyone who remembers them," she said. "Especially people like you." "People like me?" "People who make deals. People who forget details. People who underestimate the quiet ones." She set down the tray. "Your breakfast is on the veranda. The blueberries are from your favorite farm." I stopped dead. "How do you know what farm I prefer?" Her eyes twinkled. "You told me." "I most certainly did not." "You do talk in your sleep," she said lightly, walking past me. "Well, you talk enough." I felt the back of my neck warm. I wasn't sure if it was embarrassment, suspicion, or something softer. The softer part annoyed me greatly. Later that afternoon, as if the universe were determined to stack chaos like poker chips, my daughter Melissa stormed into my study. She always enters rooms like she's kicking in a door during an operation. She inherited that from her mother. "Dad," she hissed, "she knows things." I closed my book, or pretended to. I'd been rereading the same sentence for 10 minutes. "Who? Be specific." "We live in a 30-room house." "The maid." "She's not a maid. She's the housekeeper." "She's unsettling." She stared at me this morning as if she was calculating how long I'd last in a crisis. "Well," I said, "you did spill coffee down the entire staircase last month. That was one time. And an impressive demonstration of gravitational force." She glared. "I'm serious." She mentioned something about your old lawyer. The one who disappeared. My heartbeat clattered in my chest like a dropped typewriter. What exactly did she say? Melissa crossed her arms. She said, he never filed the documents your father wanted. How would she know what you asked him to file? That was private. You didn't even tell us. I didn't. I never told anyone. The last person who knew that was… No. Impossible. My daughter leaned closer. Dad, who is this woman? A breeze rattled the window. It sounded like someone whispering a warning. I don't know, I said, and hated that it was true. That night, sleep refused to come. My mind kept circling back to those half-familiar things about Evelyn, the way she moved, precise and economical, the way she spoke, equal parts warmth and steel, the way she appeared to know me from the inside out, like the blueprints of my life were stored in her apron pocket. There was one person in my past who had been like that. One person who could have become this version of Evelyn. But she was gone. Lost in the shuffle of bad decisions, debts, and one ugly incident involving the FBI, a safe house, and a man named Doyle who insisted sunglasses made him invisible. A sliver of moonlight cut across my bed like a blade. I swung my legs over the edge and grabbed my cane. I didn't usually use it, but tonight felt like a cane sort of night. As I stepped into the hall, a floorboard creaked in the distance. A shadow move. My pulse jumped. From a third-person perspective, and I only know this because memory has a funny way of filming itself in style, the hallway looked like something out of a thriller. Long, dark, with heavy portraits that followed you with their eyes. My silhouette leaned slightly on the cane. The shadow at the far end moved with the confidence of someone who belonged there, or someone who wanted me to think they did. I tightened my grip. Who's there? No answer. Just the hum of the air system and the faint ticking of the grandfather clock downstairs. Then the shadow stepped into the faint light. Evelyn. Her expression unreadable, her posture straight as a ruler. You shouldn't wander the house at night, she said. Your blood pressure spikes. That was the third deeply private thing she shouldn't have known. I lifted my chin. Are you watching me? I watch the house. That's not what I asked. She took a step closer. Her face softened, though her eyes didn't. You are not in danger, she said quietly. But someone in this house might be. A chill threaded down my spine. Who? She held my gaze for 3 long seconds. Then she said, that depends on what you decide to remember. The next moment she walked past me and vanished into the dark hallway, her footsteps silent, her presence lingering like the end of a sentence I wasn't ready to finish. I stood there feeling both 80 years old and suddenly young enough to believe in mysteries again. The past wasn't knocking anymore. It had let itself in, brewed a pot of coffee, and made itself comfortable. And I had the distinct, uneasy suspicion that Evelyn was the only person who knew how this story truly started, and how it was going to end. I woke up the next morning feeling like my brain had been spun in a washing machine filled with gravel. Whatever Evelyn meant about someone in the house being in danger clung to me like static. It didn't help that I dreamed of a woman from my past, not Evelyn, but someone with the same sharp jawline and the same terrifying ability to read my thoughts before I'd had them. Her name back then had been Elise, a name I hadn't said out loud in decades. When I woke, the name still sat in my throat like a swallowed coin. By the time I hobbled downstairs, the smell of coffee greeted me before sunlight did. Evelyn was already in the kitchen, slicing peaches with the precision of a surgeon who happened to care about aesthetic. Sleep? She asked without looking up. I did something resembling it. I slid into the chair at the table. You walk around the house at night often? Only when something feels off. And last night felt off to you? In a house this size, I can feel it when a heartbeat changes rhythm. I stared at her. Normal people say things like the air duct rattled. She didn't laugh. She kept slicing, each cut clean, identical, merciless in its perfection. I'm not normal, she said. We've established that. She wasn't wrong. I rubbed my knee, pretending it hurt more than it did, mostly to give my hand something to do. Before I could push further, my son Daniel burst in like a Labrador that had swallowed a conspiracy theory. Dad, he panted, the safe in your office was opened. I felt my stomach collapse. Impossible, I said. It only opens with my print. That's what makes it impossible, he replied. But it was open. And something's missing. Evelyn didn't react. Not a twitch. Not even a polite flicker of concern. She just kept slicing peaches, the blade whispering through fruit. I got up too fast, and the room spun a little. Daniel grabbed my arm. Easy. You look pale. Tell me what's gone, I said. He hesitated. The red folder. A cold draft wrapped around my spine. That folder hadn't been touched in 35 years. It held two things. An old photograph and a single page with 3 names written on it. One name had been crossed out. One name belonged to me. And the third was Elise's. I hadn't thought about that list in so long that it felt fictional, something a younger, stupider version of me would have invented during the messiest chapter of my life. Evelyn placed the knife down. Not loudly, softly, almost thoughtfully. Someone opened your safe, she said. But it wasn't me. Her voice had a grain of warning in it, like an instrument slightly out of tune. I turned to her. Then who? She met my eyes with an honesty that frightened me more than any lie could have. Someone you used to know. Here's where the world shifts into one of those cinematic shots. A wide view of my study, early morning sun cutting in through the tall windows, dust drifting like snow. The safe sits open behind my desk, its door ajar like a slack jaw. Daniel stands stiff with anger. I stand stiff with dread. And Evelyn, in her immaculate uniform, watches everything with that eerie calmness that suggests she had expected this long before any of us did. She picks up the safe door between 2 fingers, inspecting the metal, the edges, the lock mechanism. This wasn't forced, she said. Someone knew the timing. When the system resets, when the biometric scanner does its brief calibration cycle. There's a window of exactly 4 seconds. Daniel blinked. How do you even know that? She gave him the sort of glance one gives a child who has asked why the sky is blue for the 8th time. I make it my business to know how the house works. The house, he echoed, suspicion dripping from the word like sap. I wasn't listening to either of them. My gaze was fixed on the empty space in the safe where the red folder had been. A space the shape of regret. After a moment, Evelyn said, Someone is trying to reopen a story that should have stayed closed. You're talking like you know what was in there, Daniel snapped. I know enough, she said. I finally found my voice. Evelyn. She turned toward me slowly, a soft, ghost-like motion. Were you sent here? Her eyes tightened just slightly, as if weighing the danger of the truth. I came here because someone asked me to. But not for the reasons you think. Who? I pressed. Someone who wanted me to protect you. Protect me from what? A shadow crossed her expression. From the consequences of your own damn past. I inhaled sharply. Daniel cursed under his breath. It's Elise, isn't it? I whispered. Evelyn didn't answer. She didn't have to. Daniel stormed out. That's his preferred conflict resolution method. I stayed behind, gripping the edge of my desk until my knuckles turned the color of weak tea. Elise. My brilliant, infuriating, dangerously clever accomplice from a lifetime ago. Elise who knew secrets that could sink careers, marriages, and occasionally small government. Elise who once saved my life and nearly ruined it in the same year. If she was back, then something was coming. And not the kind of something that could be handled with a lawyer. Slowly, Evelyn stepped closer. For a moment I could almost see the ghost of the younger woman she might have once been, not physically, but in the confidence of her posture, the precision in her movement, that unnerving ability to say everything while saying nothing. You need to understand something, she said. Your past didn't die. It adapted. I'm too old for this, I muttered. Nonsense. Fear keeps you young. I barked out a humorless laugh. Then I must be aging backwards at impressive speed. She tilted her head, studying me as if trying to decide how much truth my fragile old ego could absorb. Something else has happened, she said. Something I haven't told you. My pulse quickened. What could possibly be left? Evelyn folded her hands. Last night, someone entered the property. My blood pressure rose so sharply I could practically hear it. Who? A woman. Early 70s, maybe. Dressed well. Not clumsy. Not frightened. She moved like she had been here before. My heart slowed to a painful crawl. Where is she now? Gone, Evelyn said. She left before dawn. And you didn't stop her? She was not here to hurt you. How can you know that? Because she asked me the same question you asked last night. I swallowed. Which question? Evelyn looked at me with a softness I hadn't seen before, or maybe had refused to notice. She asked, Evelyn murmured, "Does he remember me?" My breath caught. Somewhere, the house seemed to hold its own breath too. Evelyn stepped back, leaving a pocket of air that suddenly felt colder. "I think there are things you need to say out loud," she said, "before others say them for you." She walked to the doorway, paused, and added, "And the woman who came, she'll return." "Why?" Evelyn's voice softened almost imperceptibly. "Because people with broken histories are drawn to each other, even when they're old enough to know better." And just like that, she was gone, leaving me alone with an open safe, an empty space where dangerous memories used to live, and a woman from my past who apparently still walked well enough to slip into my home without tripping a single alarm. The past hadn't just stepped inside. It was circling the house, waiting for its moment to knock again. I didn't expect Elise to knock. Of all the ways she could have returned, slipping through a hallway, materializing behind a curtain, stepping out of a memory like smoke, a simple knock felt almost rude. Too ordinary for a woman who had never done anything the ordinary way. But that's what I heard that morning. 3 crisp, confident taps on the glass door of my study. Taps that said, "I'm here. I always was. Open the damn door." I hesitated longer than I should have. My hand hovered on the doorknob like a teenager about to meet his date's father. When I finally opened it, there she stood. Elise. Older, of course. We both were. But she carried age the way a seasoned violin carries varnish, deepened, not diminished. Silver hair pulled back with military neatness, shoulders held with the same quiet authority she'd always had, and those green eyes that could once slice a lie in half before it left a person's mouth. Behind her, in a stillness so deliberate it looked choreographed, stood Evelyn. The two women together made the air in the hallway feel too thin. I leaned heavier on my cane than I meant to. Elise noticed. Elise always noticed. "You walk differently," she said. "You aged beautifully," I replied. One of us had to compensate. Her lips twitched, amusement or pity, I still couldn't tell. "May I come in?" she asked. As if she needed permission. As if she had ever waited for it. "Yes," I said, stepping aside. Evelyn didn't follow us in. She stayed in the doorway, posture straight, gaze steady, a silent guard dog dressed like a housekeeper. "Will you be staying close?" Elise asked her. "If necessary." "It will be." "Then yes," Evelyn said. Their exchange chilled me more than the morning air. I shut the door behind us, my pulse throbbing with a kind of dread I hadn't felt since the days when Elise and I still thought we were unstoppable. She walked into my study like she had built it. Her fingers drifted along the spines of my books, pausing now and then as if reacquainting herself with old friends. "You rearranged them," she said. "You remember how they used to be? All the way down to the dust." She turned toward me. The room felt smaller. I felt smaller. "You look tired," she said. "I'm 81, I reminded her. "Even at 81, you used to carry yourself like a general." "Well, maybe I retired." "No," she said softly. "You surrendered." I hated how easily she could still do that. Poke an old bruise with a single phrase and watch the reaction ripple through me. I moved to my desk, pretending I needed to sit. I probably did, but I didn't owe her that satisfaction. "You broke into my safe," I said. "I did." No denial? No point. "And the folder?" "Some memories don't belong behind a lock," she said. "Especially not now." The folder had contained only 2 things. An old photograph of 3 young idiots who thought they were invincible, and a list of 3 names. 1 crossed out. 1 mine. 1 hers. "What do you want?" I asked. "Honesty. Elise, I haven't seen you in 35 years, 7 months, 11 days. I blinked. "You were counting?" "You stopped counting," she said. Someone had to continue. My throat tightened. This was bad. Not dangerous bad, not yet. But emotionally bad. The kind of bad that makes old wounds reopen like they were waiting for fresh air. She stepped toward me and paused at the red leather chair across from my desk. "May I?" she asked again. And again, I knew she didn't need permission. "Sit," I said. She lowered herself into the chair with the same grace she had decades ago. As she settled, I caught a faint trace of her old perfume, jasmine and something darker beneath it. It hit me like a sucker punch from memory. "I didn't come because I'm lonely," she said immediately, cutting off any assumptions. I didn't come to rekindle anything. I didn't come because I missed you. I exhaled, slow. Good, I said. I've had quite enough mysteries for one lifetime. That's unfortunate, she replied. Because mystery is exactly why I'm here. I rubbed my temples. Elise, I already have one enigmatic woman in my house. 2 is a threat to national security. Evelyn works for me. That stopped my breath. I stared at her. She said someone sent her, but... She didn't lie, Elise said. I asked her to watch you. Quietly. Discreetly. You. My voice cracked with disbelief. After all these years? Elise looked at me the way a person studies an earthquake map, searching for fractures, anticipating aftershocks. You were being watched by someone else first, she said. Someone who shouldn't have been. My skin prickled. Who? She didn't answer right away. Her gaze drifted to the window behind me, where sunlight carved a pale line across the floor. You had enemies before, she said softly. But the ones watching you now, they're not interested in money. Or revenge. Or blackmail. What then? Correction. I swallowed. Correction for what? For the past. For the choices we made. For the people we were. For a moment, the room felt like it was sinking into the floor. Elise, I whispered, what exactly did we do that someone wants corrected now? We were reckless, yes. Stupid at times, certainly. But we didn't. We did enough, she said. Her eyes softened just slightly. Enough to regret. Enough to hide. Enough to make someone believe you don't deserve the comfortable life you built. I earned this life. Yes, she said, but you didn't earn it alone. And you didn't keep it clean. Her words hit me like falling bricks. Why are you back now? I asked. 35 years, and suddenly. You're in danger, she said simply. Explain. She leaned toward me, elbows on her knees, voice lowering to a whisper. You and I made choices in a world that has a very long memory. Everyone else on that list is either dead or missing. Her eyes locked onto mine. You're the only one left. My heart thudded painfully. And someone wants to finish that list. A silence stretched between us so taut it felt like a wire. I could almost hear my pulse. Why wait decades? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. If someone wanted me gone, they could have. Because time does half the work, Elise said. Age you. Slow you. Make you doubt your own memories. Make you easier to manipulate. And what about you? I asked. Am I supposed to believe you're my savior now? That you're here to protect me? Elise smiled gently. Not with triumph, not with malice, but with something almost weary. I'm here, she said, because I made a promise. A promise to who? To the one person you trusted more than you trusted me. I felt my breath break. You can't mean. Yes, she said. Him. The third name on the list. The one that had been crossed out decades ago. My closest friend. My biggest mistake. My greatest loss. Elise, I whispered, he's dead. That's what you think, she replied. Something inside my ribcage went cold. Slowly. Relentlessly. Like frost moving across a windowpane. Elise, I said, my voice little more than air, if he's alive. He's not alive in the way you want him to be, she said quietly. But he's alive enough that someone is carrying out what he never finished. I pressed my hands into the arms of my chair to steady myself. You're telling me, I said, that someone is trying to kill me on behalf of a dead man. No, she said. I'm telling you someone is trying to kill you on behalf of what that dead man believed you owed him. I stared at her. And you? Where do you stand in all this? She held my gaze without blinking. I stand, she said, between you and whatever's coming. Outside the study, the hallway floor creaked, a slow, deliberate step. Not Evelyn's. Not Daniel's. Someone else was already inside the house. Elise heard it too. She rose smoothly, her expression sharpening, her body shifting into an old posture I remembered far too well. Alert. Ready. Danger close. She looked at me one last time before moving toward the door. Don't get up, she said. You're too old to run and too stubborn to hide. I'll deal with it. Elise. She paused at the doorway. Yes. You can't protect me forever. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, I saw something vulnerable flicker there. I know, she said. I'm not here to protect you forever. Then what are you here for? She exhaled slowly. To give you the truth before someone else gives you the lie. Then she opened the door and stepped into the hallway. And I realized, with a weight that pressed hard on my chest, that the past wasn't just back. It was hunting. I woke before sunrise, startled by a feeling I couldn't name. It wasn't fear, not exactly. More like the leftover echo of a dream you can't recall but somehow know mattered. For a moment I lay still in the dark, listening. The house was quiet. Too quiet given the chaos of the last days. No creaking floorboards, no whispers behind walls, no suspicious shuffling in the corridors. Just the steady hush of early morning and, faintly, the far-off ocean dragging itself up the shore. I sat up slowly, stiff joints protesting like old friends who'd been ignored too long. My robe was draped over the chair where Helen must have left it the night before, neatly folded with that irritating precision of hers. A small courtesy, but now it felt like something else, a timestamp. Proof she was alive at the moment she placed it there. That alone brought a thin warmth into my chest. I made my way downstairs, expecting to find the kitchen light already on, the smell of coffee drifting through the rooms the way it always did when she was awake before me. But the kitchen was empty. Clean. Almost staged. A note lay on the marble counter, face down. And I froze. I didn't touch it right away. Strange how a piece of paper can feel like a ticking bomb when you know the past has finally caught up and is holding a stopwatch. I took a breath, turned it over, and recognized her handwriting instantly. Sharp, elegant strokes with a confidence no one her age should have been able to maintain. Gone for a walk. Needed air. Don't panic. And don't do anything stupid before I get back. A ridiculous instruction. I excelled at doing stupid things, usually by accident. I placed the note back down, but the feeling from the dream returned, prickling under my skin. Something was off. A walk at dawn wasn't peculiar for Helen. Disappearing without telling me where exactly she was going, after what happened in the study, that was. Before long I found myself wandering the hallways, as if she might materialize around any corner. I paused by the large window overlooking the driveway and noticed something that set my heartbeat racing. A black SUV, unfamiliar, parked near the gate. Engine running. The driver sitting inside, head lowered, pretending he wasn't watching the house. I felt my fingers curl into fists. I didn't need binoculars to know this wasn't someone delivering pastries. I went to the safe in my office, opened it with the code I'd used for decades. The lock clicked open with a sound far too loud for the quiet morning. Inside lay a mix of things I probably should have organized years ago. At the very back, beneath old bonds and documentation, was the pistol Helen once called your equivalent of a security blanket. I hated guns, but now I held it the way a man holds a truth he's been running from. I checked the magazine. Loaded. Just old enough to be nostalgic about danger and young enough to take one last swing at it. Before I could decide what to do next, the doorbell rang. A long, deliberate chime. Not rushed. Not nervous. Someone who felt entitled to be here. Against every sensible instinct, I went to the door and opened it. Two men stood on the porch. Dark clothes. Clean shoes. No insignia. No attempt to smile. One of them lifted his chin slightly and spoke with a calmness that felt rehearsed. Mr. Barron? I gave them a smile that belonged in an interrogation room. Depends who's asking. We'd like a moment of your time. We're looking for someone. I leaned lazily against the doorframe, trying to disguise the tension tightening in my spine. Let me guess. She's elegant, terrifying, and believes personal space is a myth. Neither reacted. The first man reached into his coat, not for a weapon, thankfully, and pulled out a photograph. A grainy image, taken long ago. Younger Helen. Hair darker, posture straighter but eyes exactly the same. Focused, dangerous, observant. A woman who seemed to carry secrets inside her like coins in a pocket. We were told she might be here, the second man said. Her name is... Her name, I interrupted, is none of your business. They exchanged a look. Subtle. Irritated. We need to speak with her, the first insisted. It's urgent. Everything is urgent when you're bad at planning, I replied. He stepped closer. Mr. Barron, this is a serious matter. So is my cholesterol. The bolder one finally tried pushing past me, but I blocked the doorway with an ease that surprised even me. Get off my property. You're interfering in an active. Gentlemen, I said, lowering my voice to a dangerous calm I hadn't used in years, I'm an old man with nothing to lose. Which means I am the last person you want to test. For a moment no one moved. Then the second man smiled coldly. We'll be back. I'll bake cookies. They left without another word, drove off down the long road, but not far. I saw them park a short distance away, lying in wait. Waiting for her. My stomach twisted. Wherever Helen was, she wasn't safe. I stepped out onto the porch, scanning the huge property as a strange panic dug its way through my ribs. Trees swayed lazily in the breeze. Birds complained from branches. The world looked too normal. I hated when life acted innocent. I started walking, first toward the garden, then toward the winding stone path that led toward the cliff. She liked that route. Said the ocean sounded less arrogant from that angle. And then I saw her. Far down the path, standing near the edge of the cliff, wind tugging at her coat. She was perfectly still, facing the sea, as if having a conversation with it. As if it might finally answer her back. Helen! I called out. She turned sharply. The expression on her face wasn't fear. It was something worse. Regret. When I reached her, she took one look at the gun in my hand and sighed like I'd shown up wearing mismatched socks. You brought that thing? I had guests. Let me guess, she said, brushing wind-blown hair from her face. Men pretending not to be government agents while doing a terrible job at it. Something like that. She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded once, a quiet surrender. They're after me, she said softly. Not because of something I did recently, but because of something I witnessed years ago. Something they thought I forgot. And did you? I asked. She smiled without humor. People like me never forget. Unfortunately. She stepped away from the cliff's edge and faced me fully. For the first time since I met her, she looked genuinely tired. Not old tired. The distinction mattered. I didn't tell you everything, Leonard, she admitted. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was trying to give you one last peaceful chapter. You deserved that. I don't want peaceful chapters, I snapped. Not if they don't include you. She blinked, startled, and some emotion flickered across her face too fast to name. You fool, she murmured. You sentimental, stubborn, wonderful fool. We heard the car doors slam behind us before we saw them. The two men from the porch, marching toward us with the grim determination of people who think bureaucracy gives them moral authority. Time's up, one of them called out. Helen straightened, but her hand trembled slightly. No, I said, stepping in front of her. Time's mine. Always has been. Mr. Barron, move aside. I raised the gun. Not pointed at them. Just held. Firmly. Enough to make them reconsider any heroics. You're trespassing, I said. Leave. This woman is needed for questioning. This woman, I said, voice steady, is the reason your investigation exists at all. She's kept you idiots from chasing the wrong ghosts for 20 years. Treat her with the respect she's earned. They hesitated. Not out of fear, but uncertainty. I could almost see the gears in their heads grinding, trying to calculate risk, protocol, headlines, witnesses. Finally, reluctantly, the bolder one spoke. Mr. Barron, we're not here to arrest her. We're here to offer protection. Helen stepped forward, eyes narrowing. Protection, she repeated. Yes, he continued. Someone else is looking for you. Someone who wants you silenced. We were trying to reach you before he did. A strange quiet fell. Even the ocean seemed to pause its breathing. Then Helen exhaled slowly. So he's alive. Unfortunately, the agent replied. I looked between them, feeling like the only man at a poker table who didn't realize the stakes were infinite. Helen finally met my gaze. You should go inside, Leonard. No. This isn't your fight. Everything is my fight if it ends with you dead, I said. Her eyes softened, subtly but unmistakably. The senior agent stepped forward again. We need her. And we need her now. Helen took my hand gently, pried the gun from my grip, and handed it to me but first. Leonard, she said softly, I'll come back. You promise a lot of things. I keep the important ones. She squeezed my hand once more, a gesture sharp enough to break me, then turned toward the agents. They escorted her toward their SUV. She glanced back only once, but the single look felt heavier than the last 2 decades of my life. I watched as the car drove away, gravel scattering under the tires, sunlight catching on the rear window until it disappeared behind the curve of the road. I stood there long after the sound faded. The wind picked up. A seagull screamed at me from overhead as if to say, "Do something, idiot." I ignored it. Inside the house, the silence was unbearable. Her teacup still sat on the table. Her cardigan still draped over the chair. Her presence lingered in every object she'd touched, every breath she'd taken inside these walls. A ghost made of warmth instead of cold. Hours passed. Maybe more. Time behaves strangely when you're waiting. By late afternoon, my phone rang. Blocked number. I answered anyway. Her voice came through faint, crackling, but bright as a match in the dark. "Leonard." My heart leapt in a way my doctor would not approve. "Where are you?" "Safe. For now." "Come home." There was a pause. "I will," she said. "But first, I need to finish something. Something that should have been finished years ago." "Don't make yourself a martyr," I warned. "You're far too irritating to die." She laughed, actually laughed, and it was the only sound capable of unclenching the knot in my chest. "I'll be careful," she promised. "And when I return we'll talk. About everything." The line went silent for a second. Then she added, voice softening to something dangerously close to confession. "You once asked if there was someone in my past I cared for. Someone I lost. Someone I regretted not choosing. I remember." "You should know," she whispered. "He wasn't a man from my past." The call cut. Just like that. I stared at the phone as if it had personally betrayed me. It took me several minutes to fully process what she had said. Then, slowly, impossibly, a smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. I walked to the balcony, leaned on the railing, watched the sun dipping low over the ocean. It occurred to me that life, even at my age, still had the capacity to surprise in painful, beautiful ways. That maybe the story wasn't over. That maybe it never would be. Because somewhere out there, an infuriating, brilliant, sharp-tongued woman was fighting to return to me. And I intended to be here when she did.